Ever feel like, I don't know, the conversation around flight training, it's always a little off, like missing the mark.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're diving into this article, and it's by a veteran flight instructor, Rod Machado.
Yeah, I read this one.
And let me tell you, he holds nothing back. Strong opinions on how to, really shake things up in flight instruction.
Yeah, he doesn't just call out bad instructors, which, plenty of people do. He wants to, overhaul the whole system.
Wow.
He's not after better instructors. He's after better pilots. And, to him, those aren't always the same thing.
That's an interesting distinction. It makes you wonder, have we been too focused on the instructors themselves and not enough on making a system that produces, actually competent, safe pilots?
Right, exactly. We assume, good instruction equals good pilots, but there's a lot more to it, right? Someone's natural ability, how motivated they are, the learning environment. Machado points out, even with standardized instructor training, like the FAA's airman certification standards,
Yes.
you still end up with some duds out there. It's I don't know, teachers, right? Years of education school doesn't guarantee a good classroom.
So true.
Yeah.
So more hours logged as a CFI, it doesn't necessarily equal a better instructor then. Where does Machado think the solution is?
His approach is kind of surprising. It's very consumer-focused. He wants pre-flight training seminars, almost like consumer reports, but for aspiring pilots, to teach them what to actually look for in an instructor.
Interesting.
He even says, use social media marketing, like any big company trying to reach customers.
That is a novel idea. I mean, most people, they jump into training relying on word of mouth, which can be a total gamble. But would pre-flight seminars like that, would they actually work? I feel like people are already overwhelmed with information.
Yeah, that's fair. But what Machado's getting at is this information asymmetry. Someone who's totally new to aviation, they've got no real way to tell a great instructor from a terrible one.
True.
And that can lead to bad experiences, people giving up on flying.
Yeah, getting mismatched with an instructor who's just not a good fit for how you learn.
Exactly.
So giving students the tools to find the right person from day one, that could be huge.
It could be.
And it kind of ties into his other radical idea, which is bringing back that limited flight instructor certificate, where qualified private pilots could teach their family members.
Oh, yeah. Imagine learning from your pilot uncle or your aunt who's got their license.
Right.
Machado argues family, they're already invested in each other, right? So they could create a more dedicated, a safer learning environment than some CFI who's just building hours.
There is a lot to unpack there. On the one hand, it's someone who knows you well, wants you to succeed. On the other, could get real complicated real fast with family dynamics. It's a bold idea for sure.
Oh, definitely bold. But Machado, he doesn't stop there. He goes after those, the time-building CFIs, the ones everyone complains about, just trying to hit their hours for the airlines.
Right.
He says, let competent pilots join regional airlines sooner, like at 500 hours instead of 1,500.
Wow. That's a big difference. What's the thinking there?
Machado believes the real crucial learning, it happens in those first few hundred hours anyway.
He's saying, put them in a structured airline environment. You've got the procedures, the oversight. That might be more beneficial for some pilots than just racking up hours with less supervision.
So like an apprenticeship, but for pilots. Instead of hoping a CFI magically transforms into an amazing instructor once they've got enough hours, you provide that structured development at the airlines.
Right.
Although, wouldn't that mean fewer experienced instructors overall in general aviation, though? It's a trade-off.
It is, yeah.
And of course, in true Machado fashion, he doesn't shy away from the, shall we say, less tangible parts of being an instructor.
Oh, no, he does not.
He thinks CFIs should be held to a good moral character standard, like airline transport pilots, ATP applicants.
Yeah. He even says maybe loyalty oaths. Loyalty oaths for flight instructors. That's a new one. So he's getting at something deeper here, though, right? About the responsibility that comes with teaching someone to fly.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just, teaching someone to, land a plane. It's about instilling that respect for safety, responsibility, even, a love for aviation itself,
Right.
Think about professions where you take an oath, right? Doctors, judges. It's because what they do has such a huge impact.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, if we thought of flight instructing more that kind of calling, not just a job, would it attract a different kind of person?
Interesting.
But while we're on the topic of totally shaking things up, we haven't even gotten to the most futuristic part of Machado's vision.
Oh, right. The AI stuff.
Yeah, AI-powered flight instruction.
Machado, he really goes all in on this, and he's coming from that experience of designing Microsoft Flight Simulator X.
Right, right.
He tells this story about a student who aced his first actual flight after 60 hours on the simulator. The instructor basically just got to be a passenger.
Wow. Those simulations have gotten so real. But there's got to be more to being a good pilot than just nailing maneuvers on a screen, right?
Yeah.
What about like decision-making?
Yeah.
Knowing how to handle real-world risks?
Yeah, you've hit on a huge point there. And to be fair, Machado acknowledges that too. He's not saying we ditch real-world flying completely.
Okay.
But it makes you question how much of it is truly essential. Like he can see AI, things like ChatGPT, but for flight training, taking things to a whole other level, offering that really personalized instruction, feedback, scenario-based training, all that.
So instead of those endless hours with a CFI, you might spend a huge chunk of your training in this super realistic sim with AI as your guide.
Right, exactly.
And then, once you've got the basics down, then you transition to the real plane, applying those skills for real.
It's kind of a phased approach, if you think about it, like learning to drive.
Well, that's a good analogy.
You wouldn't just throw someone behind the wheel on a busy street if all they've done is play video games, right? You need that initial stage, building the basic skills, but then actually using them in a real environment, that's crucial too.
This whole AI instruction thing is fascinating, though. It could really change everything about flight training. Make it more accessible, more affordable. If you don't need to pay for as many actual flight hours, if instructor availability is not holding you back, imagine anyone who wants to fly could get good training no matter where they live, how much money they have.
It's a pretty amazing thought. Though, we got to remember, AI is a tool at the end of the day. And how well any tool works, it depends on the person using it, right?
For sure.
We have to design these AI programs carefully, make sure they're not just, replicating the same old biases or focusing so much on technical skills that they forget about those crucial decision-making abilities.
Really good point. It's not about getting rid of human instructors altogether. But could we use technology to make the whole learning experience way better, more effective, more personalized?
I so.
So as we start wrapping up this deep dive into Machado's ideas here, what are your big takeaways? What really stands out to you from all this?
For me, it's this constant theme of student empowerment.
Hmm.
Like everything Machado talks about, it's about giving students more control over their training, whether it's knowing how to choose the right instructor, letting experienced pilots teach family members, or using technology to make the learning process more tailored to each person.
That's a really interesting way to put it. It's shifting away from that passive learning experience to one where the student's really in the driver's seat.
Exactly. And that leads into Machado's final kind of provocative thought, which is maybe...
Okay, Kimon, you can't leave us hanging. What's a provocative thought?
Well, he suggests that, maybe instead of always trying to fix the bad instructor problem, maybe the real key is changing how we think about learning to fly in the first place.
Interesting. So he spent all this time talking about how to improve instruction, but now he's saying the real change has to be even bigger than that.
Yeah, like maybe instead of trying to fit everyone into the same box, the same training program, we should be designing training that's more, individualized, adaptive, that works with how different people learn best.
So it's not just about finding better instructors. It's about creating a system that just works better for everyone.
Right. And maybe that future involves less of the traditional stuff and more of what Machado has been talking about, the AI-driven simulations, giving students more control over how they learn, helping them understand not just how to fly, but how to think like a pilot.
It's a whole different way of looking at it, moving away from just memorizing things, rigid instruction, towards something that values critical thinking, being able to adapt, everyone having their own path. It's a pretty exciting vision for the future, if you ask me.
It really is. And some of what Machado is suggesting, it sounds radical, but he's definitely challenging us to think bigger, not just tweak what we're doing now, but fundamentally reimagine what flight training could be, what it should be in this day and age.
A lot to think about. But hey, that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right?
Absolutely.
And for all our listeners out there, anyone who's ever dreamed of flying, maybe felt intimidated by the process, I think Machado's message is really clear. Do your research, don't be afraid to ask questions, and most importantly, find an instructor who's the right fit for you. And who knows, maybe someday we will be learning from AI in our living rooms.
That's a future I'd be curious to see.
Me too.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with me. Until next time, everyone, keep those wings level and those minds curious.